Approximately 2 decades from late 60s to mid-80s are commonly known as the Stagnation era. It is associated with the name of Brezhnev, lack of any development, corruption and gradually increasing censorship. After Soviet tanks invaded Prague, the Khrushchev War ended, and with that melted all hope for isolation's end, for change and liberalization. Despite economic and political stagnation, the cinema industry was booming. This was when the universally acclaimed masterpieces of Tarkovsky and Parajanov were created, as well as iconic Soviet comedies. Tears, separation, heartbreak, alcoholism, and even suicide attempts. Can you guess the genre? It's comedy. Even under censorship, comedies had more creative freedom than other genres. After all, it's all just for the laughs and thus it's safe. Thanks to this freedom, you could cover more sensitive topics, through metaphors, of course. Another trick to play safe was to set the film in a different time or abroad. The main character from the Stagnation suffers from existential crisis. Inability to impact anything in their country is reflected through inability to change anything in their own life. Actions don't follow words. Life takes another spin of this endless, meaningless marathon, trying to escape the reality. In films of this period, the protagonist is not clearly good or bad and might not even change. The films are similar in their settings and story events, while their characters are in crisis and despair. It makes them so similar, in fact, that they could fit as parts of one big story. Characters of the era were born during the baby boom after the war and are usually around 40. They couldn't get any feat of glory, but the shining image of their heroic mothers and fathers are constantly with them. In peace and boredom, they turn to self-reflection. The children of those glorious parents envied not just their heroism, but also their clear worldviews. They knew exactly who was bad and who was good. During the war, people knew their allies and enemies, and during Stalin's reign, a clear image of the enemy of people was created. After the 20th Congress of the CPSU, Stalin's cult of personality was debunked, and it was discovered that he was the real enemy. During the stagnation, nothing was clear. This was not just about the big city intelligentsia. The strong, salt-of-the-earth countryside character was also lost. This is how people's exodus from the countryside and the loss of peasantry culture was portrayed. The connection between people and their land was severed. The male character suffers, tries to find himself, escapes from reality, and drinks. The female character endures, rescues, waits. She does not perceive alcoholism as a flag to end their relationship, but just as another challenge to overcome. Men resort to escapism and alcohol abuse, while women turn into upside-down Cinderellas. Self-made female bosses like Katerina and Lyudmila Prokofyevna usually suffer from success and choose weak men as their partners. Wimps like Novoseltsev, drunks like Gosha, and drunk wimps like Lukashin, Afoniy, Uzilov. Women understood that they could live and work just like men do. They started working in factories not just as blue-collars but also as managers and bosses. However, women's role in family remained the same. Soviet families still follow the classic model where the man remains in charge of everything and keeps all dirty lingerie at home. This order of things remained the same even when women achieved high positions in their careers. However they still had to wash, cook and clean house. Alcoholism was not a disorder in films of that period, but rather a social phenomenon. People drink, all of them and a lot. This addiction does not serve as a trait of character as in films from earlier times, but rather as another piece in the puzzle of existential dread. Nobody even judges the characters and, if they do it with understanding. To escape censorship, filmmakers moved their stories into another location or time period. In the USSR, all is stable and good. All of the intractable problems and woes are somewhere out there. That's why the filmmakers of the period loved to set Russian classics or move stories abroad. The wind will change as the past will go away in Mary Poppins. Something could happen in Great Britain. Dreams of change were also coded in other films, for example Baron Munchausen, The Dog in the Manger or Sherlock Holmes. Film adaptations served as a medium to discuss real problems without clearly bringing them up. Still frames coming from films of the stagnation can be almost unmistakably identified. This effect is created due to the Svema film tape. Even a sunny summer day in the country looked dull and dusty in this color scheme. The films embraced late autumn and dirty, wet winter. Even if, according to the script, it was supposed to be early autumn outside, as in September vacation, it rained for days on end. This time of year in stagnant cinema was often reflected in the titles: Autumn Marathon, Vacation in September, When September Comes, and Autumn. The film's setting moved from elegant Moscow or romantically harsh Siberia to rainy, gloomy Leningrad. The filming locations were ordinary places: panel houses, standard apartments, public transport. Each viewer could recognize their crystal glassware, furniture, or walls. The booming construction of standard apartment buildings was also reflected in the movies. The plot of the film The Irony of Fate is even based on the principle of picture uniformity. The main character of this film ends up in someone else's apartment and does not even notice it. And in All New Year and Vacation in September, in the beginning of the story, the characters move into new apartments. The living environment in stagnant cinema is not only uniform, it is also in disrepair. Paradoxically, new neighborhoods often look as if they have already survived decades of post-Soviet infrastructural corner cutting. Stagnant cinema is full to the brim with dilapidated buildings, cracked asphalt, and battered buses. In this aspect, the ruined zone in Andrei Tarkovsky's Stalker takes the cinematic trend to its extreme. The surroundings sign the perfect harmony with characters' inner world. Radio, television, visual propaganda is just a background noise, not a source of truth or meaningful information. Poster slogans are perceived more as a vehicle for irony or parody. Public meetings are more of a ritual. People sit through the mandatory part of the meeting and go back home. A severe reprimand with a warning will not make the main character change for the better. No one is afraid of being expelled from the party. Everyone understands that everything will remain the same. And compositionally, at the end of the film, the protagonist often finds himself back at the square one. References to the stagnant cinema's characters, recognizable images and characteristics can also be found in contemporary cinema. Because today's impossibility of change is very similar to timelessness of the stagnation era.